Well, PO, it's the top of the hour, so I'm thinking maybe we should go ahead and get started.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So I'd like to first and foremost just welcome everyone who's on this call, whether it's live or whether it's in a recorded fashion. And thank you for joining us. We have a fantastic presentation. PO is going to be leading the presentations we go through. But before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of administrative items. And first and foremost, I'll just introduce myself and I'll let PO introduce himself when he begins. I'm Rodney Korn. I'm the Director of Education for LACO. And it's a pleasure to be part of this fantastic company as well as this presentation with my great friend and colleague, PO. He is fantastic and you guys will enjoy this immensely. A lot of information, so sit back and enjoy. The second thing I want to talk about is your control panel. Depending on what device you're on, you have a control panel. You will be muted and there will be no video. That's only just to minimize chatter and chaos that can happen in multiple videos and microphones. So as we go through this, you will have the opportunity to ask questions if you so choose. We will reserve the right to answer questions at the end of the presentation, so we can go through the presentation in a pretty good flow and then be able to address questions based upon all the information that you've heard at the end. However, if we go through something and you have a very specific question that would be relative to the particular slide or content that we're talking about at that time, please feel free to go ahead and drop that in the questions tab. So if you look on your control panel, you'll see a questions tab. That's where you want to type in information. Unfortunately, the chat tab doesn't work, don't know why. But use the questions tab and we'll be able to, I'll be scanning and watching that the whole time. So what we'll do is we'll determine whether that question will be specific and at a good time and place for this particular moment in the presentation. If it's not for any reason, we will address it at the end. And if for some reason we don't have an immediate answer to your question, we will get back to you with an answer to that particular question. So just know that we will answer and address everything we can. It just when it'll happen could be different based upon the actual question itself. And I think for the most part, that will be it. We've talked about the questions and to use the question tab. Before I turn this over to PO, we just want to get a real quick overview of who's on the call, kind of what you do and where you're from. So we're going to ask two polls. All you have to do is just answer the poll if you would, please. And that just gives us an idea of who's on the call so we can make this more specific to you and your environment and what you do in the wellness environment itself. So the first poll we're going to ask is just basically, who are you? Which of these would best describe you? And we just try to put pretty broad because it could be a lot of different areas. So if you just click on which of those best describe you, then we will be able to have that. Fantastic. So right now, excellent. Thank you all. So essentially, what we have, PO, is we have 40% are workplace wellness consultant, 20% are trainer coaches, and 40% are others. And since we have a 40% are others, I'm going to ask one quick favor if I can, PO, for you and I, because that's a pretty high number of others. Those of you that are others, if you could just type in the questions tab, what you actually are titled or what your title is, that would be extremely helpful. If you would do that, please. And I'll give you a second. So for those of you that are others, answered other to that. So there's the breakdown, PO. If you could just type in what your title is, that would be that would be great. We appreciate that. And I'll give you one more second. So remember, type that in the questions tab. Okay, so didn't have anyone answer that. All right, so let's go to the next poll then. Last one is just essentially what region you're from. So if you could just tell us what region you're from, that would also help us just to understand. Well, that's pretty simple. So 100% is UK, Europe. All right, excellent. So just so everyone can see. So PO, we have 100% from UK, Europe. So we're speaking specifically to the UK and European market. Fantastic.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. So with that, I'm going to now turn this over to PO, and we're going to let him do what he does. And remember, use your questions tab and type that in if you have any questions. Thank you. PO,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks, Rodney, and thanks everyone for joining in today. And really, it's really helpful knowing where you guys from and what you work with, because we have a lot of different examples today, and a lot of them are from Europe. So that's really good. And I just wanted to start with like the question, why is workplace well-being important? Well, according to the World Health Organization, employment considers to be a social determinant of health, meaning that it's so important that it shapes our well-being at a very deep level. So work can have an impact on many aspects of our health, and that ranges from our social health to our mental, physical, but also financial wellness. So it also will have an impact on our sense of purpose and our ability to grow. And where, how, and when we work today may have changed and could also continue to evolve in the future. So this will potentially remove traditional boundaries between work and other life activities. So it could be a good time to maybe change the way we think about well-being to reflect these changes in the workplace. So if you're a trainer or you work like a consultant for workplace environments, I hope and I will do my very best to give you as much value as I possibly can. And since we're all human beings at the end of the day, on a personal level, I would say that no matter what profession you have or what goals you might have in your life or in your profession, or where you are in your life, our health will always be the most important asset for us to do the things we love in life and to make a difference for ourselves, for our community, our family, friends, colleagues, and also, of course, our clients. And as we will see it during this webinar today, a healthy, engaged workforce can positively impact companies' bottom line. So we will, during this presentation today, dig into some concrete studies around workplace wellness for you as a coach or trainer to use, or you as a workplace consultant, or whatever you might be working on, hopefully can use in your everyday profession to help people get better. And we're on a mission here at Eleiko. So both for Rodney, who's, as he said, our Director of Education, and for me, P.O. Osbeck, I'm working with our corporate and residential clients here at Eleiko. We're on a mission together because here at Eleiko, we're striving every day to help people get stronger so they can perform better in their sports and in life. And we will be particularly interested in the life segment of that mission statement today. That is also why we're now focusing more on helping both corporate clients and residential clients, meaning property owners and such, to integrate and finding ways to integrate physical activity into their everyday life. And as Rodney said, please, if you have any questions, feel free to use the question bar. So we'll look at some strategic health initiative and how that can have an impact on our workforce and business. We will also see how you can actually strengthen the workforce and the workplace. So we'll be quite concrete when it comes to how you can put vision into practice when it comes to health. And health is quite a broad thing to talk about. But today, when we speak about health and we speak about the tool of physical activity and adapted training based on someone's needs and wants, because there's a lot of tools in the toolbox. And what we will see during this presentation is that health and physical activity is a great one to use, but it's no size fits all, but this is one powerful tool. And if you're really interested in more of the story behind corporate wellness, how it has evolved during the last couple of years, I would encourage you to go back and also look at the replay of our webinar from December 7th, where we also talked about how corporate wellness has gone from nice to have to must have, where we also discussed a lot about employer branding and benefits and what type of benefits are truly appreciated, and dug into some interesting data around that. So if you're interested in that, I would encourage you to also look at the replay of that one. And during the last couple of years, a lot of things have happened within the workplace. And I think that we all, coming out of the pandemic together, I think we have got a different understanding of health. Even if I'm working with health, or I'm just, interested in health on a more personal level, or whatever it might be, it seems like especially when I'm talking to our customers and clients and prospects, it seems like everyone has got a little bit greater focus on their well-being overall. But also it seems like for many people, the definition of well-being has been a little bit more broadened, which meaning it seems like more and more people doesn't really just think of good health as just social or just mental or physical. It seems like more and more people are really adding those things up. And alongside, more people and companies, of course, are reviewing the offering from their companies in the terms of the entire workplace. And what we've seen from a lot of studies and research is that physical activity is a really important parameter for this, which means also that when we look at benefits, as I just said, we've talked about much before when it comes to the last webinar, it's really, a benefit that is really, really appreciated. And many companies are and have also opened their eyes for finding different opportunities for physical activity and offering, because they want it to be the most attractive employer. And why we train have really changed the last couple of years as well. Looking at a report, the MindBody 2023 fitness report, where they asked, in this case 16,000 Americans, and I believe if you are from UK or Europe, we have a lot of in common with the American population. And when they asked them about their health habits, they also included the question, what's the main reason why you're exercising or working out? And what they saw in 2021 was that the main purpose for working out, I believe it was around 36 or 37%, said that it's due to, I want to have good weight control. And then came the pandemic and more of a hybrid work environment for many of us. It changed a little bit to reducing stress, and I believe this was around 43%. Nowadays, more and more people are training to have a long and healthy life. And what we can see, looking from different data, this is also from MindBody, is that many people, more than half of these 16,000 people, said that they actually train movements to prepare them for their everyday life. So as I stated in the beginning, we're on a mission to help people perform better and be stronger in their life. And this is really what it's all about, helping people to be the best and most healthy version of themselves. And also, 3 out of 4 consumers says that wellness is more important now than ever. And looking at more of a corporate view on it, 85% of employees say, I'm very likely to stay at a company that is focusing on well-being. And on the management level, they recognize that on that level, 95% say, well, we believe as employers and bosses and managers that we have a really strong and big responsibility for the health and well-being of our employees, our people, because people are the ones creating companies, which we will see soon. So there's a little bit of a paradigm shift when it comes to workplace wellness, because the workday isn't really what it used to be. We nowadays see new demands from hybrid work setups, and also that the work-life balance is evolving in many ways. I would maybe call it work-life integration, because it seems like we're more and more integrating work into our everyday life rather than just being on and off. And new challenges often need new solutions. But looking at some data from Deloitte, we really see that there's a gap between what leaders think about health challenges and what they actually are, as you will see in this one. Here you can see how respondents from the manager level thinks about what they think about the health challenges for employees, what the employees actually, and in the green boxes, think for themselves. And as you can see, there's a big gap in the whole segment, and there often is, of course, but we can really see that there's, we can really work with this, helping more companies to focus on the overall well-being, because as we will see soon, there's a really, a correlation between feeling good and doing good, both on an individual level and on a company level. Also, new data says that 80% of executives say that well-being is a top priority. But at the same time, according to Deloitte, nearly 90% of workers think that their work life is actually getting worse. So that leads to around 57% of employees are considering quitting their job for a job that better supports their well-being. And I think this is truly amazing data, because this will really help us having a good conversation with our clients, our companies we work with. If you're a consultant, having that data to really back up and help that company to see, okay, what are our issues and problems, and how can we actually use well-being as a tool for helping you. And also, if you're a personal trainer or a coach, this is truly important, because if we can help people, we can have a total new environment when it comes to your workplace. And we will dig into that soon. And another report from Deloitte also showed that on the C-suite level, and employees both are finding it hard to prioritize their mental health and physical health. And that includes exercising, sleeping, socializing, and the whole work-life balance. But as you will see on the top list here, it says that move and exercise every day and stop at a reasonable time is really the main challenges they are facing. And when it comes to move and exercise, it's not about training for the Olympics. In this case, it's getting those steps into your day, getting that physical activity into your everyday life, where your heart pumps a little bit extra, that blood flow is increasing. That will have an amazing effect on both blood, muscles, tissues, and everything else. And when we talk about exercise today and training, it can be both from the physical activity perspective, just moving throughout the day, but also in a more, boxed way, where we actually are training for a specific purpose. And we will soon look at some data around that. And during the last years, I think that every organization has struggled in some way, but looking at some data, which we will dig into now, there's one factor that is, irrespective of both the company size and which sector they're in, that is helping and determining whether they are thriving or just surviving. And me working with corporate wellness on a daily basis, and I've done so for more than 10 years, I think, as well as you guys listening today, I think we all know anecdotally and instinctively that companies with a good workplace culture often is better equipped to deal with the different challenges that we're facing every day. And right now, I think throughout the world, we're really facing a lot of challenges. So the question is, how can we measure the impact of this good culture on a company's financial performance? Because working with companies and real estate owners, we always have to back it up with some type of, this is what we can actually return on the investment can be. So we both speaking to the employers, where the hard facts is one thing, but also with the employees on how we can increase our well-being. Because everyone at the end of the day is a human being, as I said in the beginning, and we all know that health can really help us doing the things we love. So looking at this, to test the idea, a study from a company called Great Place to Work. It's a global authority company when it comes to workplace culture. They, on an annual level, puts together the fortunate 100 greatest or best companies to work for. And alongside with that, they created a hypothetical index using the FTSE Russell. And it's a global index and data provider from the US. And what they did was they compared those two stock performances over a longer time period to see if there's a correlation. And as you might think, because otherwise I wouldn't maybe mention it today, but as you might think or may think, there's a correlation between those two. But for me, I could really be honest, I didn't think it would be this great. And so what they saw was the best 100 index outperformed the broader market from the Russell 3000 and 1000 index with 16.5%, returning 37.4% compared to 20.9% from the Russell 3000, which is the broadest benchmark of stocks in the US. But also what they saw was that when they looked at it from a longer time period, in this case 22 years, they saw that the 100 best index had a 3.23 times greater return than the average market. So feeling good at work makes it also deliver results that speaks for itself. And I think this is wonderful, showing that when we are focusing on people, as our CEO, Eric, always says, put people first, because then magic will happen. And I think the results from this study speaks for itself. So, is physical activity in the workplace cost effective, and also can it have an effect on health and productivity? We will look at two different studies, and both of them is from Denmark here in Europe. So great, we have a lot of Europeans with us today, maybe someone from Denmark. But before doing that and digging into this, we all know that being physically active have an influence on every cell, every organ, and every system in our body. And if we program it right and it's performed appropriately based on the individual needs of that person, both strength and cardio can have an amazing and dramatic effect on our body's overall efficiency. Because as Jim Rohn says, our body is the only place we will live in. So we really have to, take care of it. And the amazing effects includes both better quality and resilience of muscles, connectivity, tissues, but also, of course, better functionality when it comes to our brain, heart, metabolism, lungs, stomach, you name it. So we know that this will actually help us. So we will look at both, according to the first study we'll look at from MindBody, that many people wants to work out to having a longer lifespan. But I think when we say lifespan, we often mean health span as well. So we will start off just looking at a new study coming out last year when it comes to strength and cardio in combination and the impact it will have on health and lifespan. But we'll also look at some different studies looking at physical activity within the workplace environment. So hopefully you get a lot of value from these. And after adjusting for results, the results from factors such as age, gender, education level, possible diseases, what the researchers saw was that the ones who actually were physically active and who were exercising for an hour a week were 15% less likely to have a premature death than the ones who didn't exercise at all. And if you would step up a little bit to 3 hours a week, that's more or less the World Health Organization's recommendation as well, then that figure went from 15% to 27%. And if you also added 1 or 2 strength training sessions each week, that jumped up to 40%. And I think this really tells the whole story why it's a good investment taking care of our bodies. But alongside with that, there's also a lot of research coming out around the physical activity paradox, where studies from the University of Southern Denmark in Denmark have shown that those with active work setups may in fact have a higher risk of ill health than the ones who have more sedentary jobs. I don't know about your everyday work environment, but for me, I have more or less a sedentary job. Doing this type of work or creating, different projects, it's more or less me sitting by a computer or in a Teams call, or sitting with a client, or sitting in my car going somewhere here in Sweden. So it's really interesting that there's a paradox according to scientists. And a likely research, according to the researchers of this study, is that the physical activity at work isn't really the same as exercise we do in our free time. So their advice is that we should be better at adapting training to the individual's needs and also the needs of the profession in order for us to cope better with being active at work. So we know that fitness and strength and cardio is really needed, but the adaptation is really key when it comes to this. And according to the
if I can just jump in, because you go back to that last slide, one thing it's important to know is when we're talking about that paradox, where that paradox comes into play is most physically active jobs tend to be repetitive motion. And so what's happening is the body is going through a certain pattern over and over and over and over. And it's like wear patterns on a tire. When you're doing repetitive motion over and over and over, it's like you're wearing one section of the tire down. It's like your tires are out of alignment. And what happens is that you start to break down the body because it can't repair itself when there's a constant movement pattern day after day after day. So an example is here we have someone who's doing construction work. Most people will do construction work, whether they're shoveling or they're hammering or they're digging or they're whatever they're doing. They could be sawing, whatever. They're doing it with one side of the body predominantly. Rarely do they switch sides. So you can shovel from both sides, but people always do one side. So when we translate that into training, if someone goes into the gym and they start working out strength training and they start doing a lot of strength training, and or they just even start doing any movement, what they're doing is two things. One, their body is already under stress. So if someone is already under stress and then you're adding more stress to the system, what you're doing is you're breaking the system down further. You're not allowing it to recover. So there's a recovery strategy. So it's not that they can't train or they can't do extra movement outside of their job. It's how they're doing it and what they're doing with it or for it. So they have to bring the intensity down potentially based on how stressed they are. One of the things we do have at Lego is we have a system that we use. It's called a raw scoring system. It's a readiness and well-being, where you can find out how stressed your system is. So when you go to train, you know that you can either do a lot, a little, or very minimal based on that. So I just want to make that very clear that it's usually repetitive motion. Repetitive motion over prolonged periods of time breaks the body down, and it doesn't allow it to recover. Because in order to get better, you have to have the stress, but you have to have recovery. And if that recovery doesn't come into the play, then that person, when they go work out, starts to break the system down more. And then you have to bring in hydration, nutrition, and all these other factors in that. So I just want to go on a little tangent real quick, Pio, so that those who are trainers and coaches understand that it's not just about getting people to go move and work out and do those stuff. It's finding out where they are and what can they do. And this goes for anybody, whether you're in a sedentary job, but you're mentally stressed and you're just overloaded with stress. You can't just go in and start working out at a high level. There has to be a way to gauge that so that what you're putting stress into that system, or how much stress you're putting into their system, matches what they're capable of handling. That's the key. And if we do that correctly, then we allow the body, one, to recover, and two, to enhance its performance over time. So I'll stop there.
Amazing. Thanks, Rodney.
Mhm.
And as Rodney just said, that it's really key when it comes to this. As we see through science and our long experience, I know, Rodney, you're my role model when it comes to these type of questions. So we really see that this is key, talking about occupational physical activity. And what was also conducted in Denmark, it seems like they're doing a lot of good research in Denmark, is that they also looked at the, as we saw from this university in Denmark around occupational health and those advices that Rodney just came with. Those are really, really helpful. And what they also saw in another study is when they took those different tools that Rodney just presented and put that into action. And that is what we will look at right now. And what they saw in this was quite a great study, a big study on over 3,500 employees throughout Denmark. And it was ranging from both healthcare personnel to construction workers, dentists, and fighter pilots. So quite a good range of different types of occupations. And what they did in the beginning of this study was that they did a health survey. They looked at blood fats, blood pressure, cardiovascular capacity and strength, and body fat, body mass index, to get a good view of who are we dealing with here and what are they right now. And then what they did was that, and this is especially interesting, I believe you're working as a trainer or a workplace wellness consultant, is that they took 1 hour each week to train those people with an individual program, even though they did it in group because a personal trainer supervised the whole training. But if you miss that hour, you miss 100%, right? So what they did was that they divided that hour into 3 different segments of 20 minutes. So 20 minutes, 3 times a week. And the result, as you might think, was they got better stamina and strength, the reduced pain, and also overweight. But what they saw was that the sick leave within the group that had been physically active and working out according to the needs of that job and the needs of that individual, as Rodney also spoke about, was that the sick leave reduced by 24 days. And in the other group, who hadn't been physically active, it increased with 8 days. And also the productivity went up from 2.6 to 6.4%. And that's quite a big deal. And one of the key factors here was that also they had their leaders in every company was acting as support and role models. One key thing is when we have a leadership that supports us, then we can make stuff happen. Then the magic happens. So we always have to have leaders with us acting as support and role models. Of course, sometimes it can happen anyway, but that is one thing we've seen both from experience but also from studies, that we have to have leaders acting as support and role models. And except the amazing effect physical activity and adaptive training has on our bodies, science also tells us that it have a profound way of impacting our mental health, as many of you are aware of. It will help us handling depression, anxiety, and stress in a great way. But also, as we will see here, it can have an effect on our creativity. So an active workforce might also be a smarter workforce. And I don't know for you, but I know, for example, Steve Jobs, the late co-founder of Apple, he was known for his walking meetings. And also Meta's or Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg has also been known for having meetings on foot. And perhaps you maybe pace around back and forth on occasion to drum up some new ideas. I know it's true for me. Often when I'm doing, the setup for these types of presentation, I'm often, rehearsing, going around my neighborhood or here at our Aleco Sports Center, since we have a running track. I go up and down there just because I've known that, and I've noticed the effects of me walking can have a good way. Or prior to this webinar today, I actually hit the gym doing a good strength and cardio session just because of this, as we're going to talk about now. What they saw at Stanford was that creativity thinking improves while a person is physically active, and shortly thereafter as well, especially according to this research. And what they saw was that when people were walking, and this was the walking itself, not where they were walking, so not indoors or outdoors, it didn't really matter. And they did that for 30 minutes. They had a similar boosted creativity effect. And they also saw in the results that the ones who had been moving had a 60% better output on creativity tests than the ones who had been sitting. And I think if I had invited or found a software that could increase my creativity with my creativity with 60%, I would be quite wealthy right now. But it seems like just having that little bit of stroll in your midday can have a good effect on your creativity. So I think that's amazing. And also we know that the mind movement connection isn't just, it's more than just the managing of creativity, handling depression, strength, and all stress, and also anxiety. It's also what equips our people, our employees and senior staff also with the brain power to routinely do their best work. So I think there's no secret that everyone's energy can wane over the course of the day. If you're in Europe now, and maybe it's 4:30 or maybe it's 3:30, this is the time where we Europeans often feel maybe a little bit tired. So we know that this can change over the workday, which can help, well, not help maybe, but it can lead to sluggish thinking and diminished output, and also some mental mistakes. But as counterintuitive as it sounds, exercise can actually create energy rather than just taking it. And that has been stated from a numerous set of studies over the years, and where they've seen an association between physical activity and reduced risk of feelings of low energy and fatigue. So introducing those small ways to be physically active throughout the workday can really have a great effect, as we've seen from the Great Place to Work study, and also from the Danish studies, that it can have a profound way of impacting our both well-being, of course, but also our workday, which will have an effect on the companies and our economy and also our society. And according to reports from World Health Organization and Deloitte, and what they did here was to look at what type of ROI, return on investment, do we have when we are spending anything on well-being. And according to a new study, a new research that just came out 1 month ago, they saw that if we invest £1 in well-being, we will probably get 7.2 back. And I think that's quite a good investment. So if you're in an organization as a trainer or a workplace consultant, or if you're working with those type of issues on a daily basis, or if you want to, how can you act in your organization? So let's dig in some concrete examples and some best practices when it comes to this. And when it comes to putting vision into practice, I would really like to stress that, as with any cultural change, we all need leaders to set the example. So that's why it's so important for managers, executives, to take that role model hat and adding physical activity into their work days, to really clearly communicating that their intention is there, and also encourage others to join in. If you live in Europe, maybe you have heard of Vasaloppet. And Vasaloppet is, I think it's the world's longest cross-country skiing competition. It's 90 kilometers, so 9 miles if you're in the European Union. It's quite long. It takes, for the winner, it takes 3.5 hours to skate. And every year we have a small team joining from Eleiko. The funny thing is, or the wonderful thing is, that when you go to our showroom on our corporate gym here, there's one person, really setting an example when it comes to training in the ski erg or running or lifting things. and it's our CEO, Eric. He's always the one, putting in that extra effort. And that really helps others to join in, setting that example of this is something that's important for us, giving our best as much as we can. But also when it comes to well-being on a bigger level, I think it's a good, statement to really say that this is more of a systematic problem, and one that hasn't really, come overnight. So we can't really solve it tomorrow, but we can do it long term, and we all can do something to really, add up to that situation. So here we will look at some advice on how you can go from thought to action when it comes to increasing well-being within your organization or with the organization you are currently working in. And the first one is what I would like to emphasize is to raise awareness around that physical wellness, and of course, mental and social wellness as well. And setting examples, not just for the HR team, but for the whole company, to introduce practices and programs that are designed to get people moving. And different examples can be, a company-wide movement challenge, or setting some initiatives to really help people, getting those extra steps, because every step counts. Here at Eleiko in November, we had a challenge where everyone who got 30 minutes of some activity could set a cross in the calendar, and that will give them one ticket. And at the end of the month, you can win something. So if there's a gym perk or any kind of those types of perks, you can have associated with your benefits package. Rewarding that type of checking can also be one way to help people get moving. And for teams who have been reintroducing any level of in-person work, taking walking meetings, as we've seen, can be a great way of, both take a break for exercise, but also feeling productive. And those one-to-one check-ins may also be a little bit less informal, so you can reduce the tension if there's that type of situation. And we also have a really interesting customer in Copenhagen, which is a fashion company. They use their local corporate gym for those one-to-one interactions and brainstorm meeting. And we have a case on our website if you want to learn more. Just find it under Ledeux. And also, as we talked about, and which Rodney you discussed so good, is to have a situational adaptation for everything. So for those who have a more active work, for those who have a sedentary work situation, review the situation on each workplace, both for the individual and the profession and what needs they have, and make that adjustment so it becomes more healthy for them, and based on the needs, help them to promote physical activity and or rest, as we've seen, since recovery is also vital. And that might be through active zones or corporate gyms or relaxation rooms and such. But it can also be that for those who have been, driving back and forth to work, just sitting by the computer, we have to have a more of a holistic approach when it comes to this, to look at the whole picture and see what types of elements do we have on a workday basis, and how can we help our people, getting the things they need. Is it mobility? Is it more strength? Is it cardio? Is it rest? And how we can mix that up to really, have a result on the bigger picture. And I really would like to emphasize this, even if we have, given them external conditions, training and physical activity has to be meaningful for people, of course, because if I know why I want to be healthy, I think that will help me, get out in the rain for that walk or that run, or hitting the gym at 6 a.m. just to feel energized. Because when we can answer, why do I want to be healthy? For me, it's very easy. I want to be a superhero for my child and also be the best I can at my work. So that's my why behind being healthy. So it matters what you do and how you do it, with whom, and also when. And today there's plenty of different tools to analyze the needs and wants within an organization, but then could use that data to offer the right solutions. So adapt solutions based on data today, and maybe less about what feels like a good solution, which we often have done maybe before the technology came to this point where we are right now. So if you have a profession where you walk and stand much, it might be that functional training is of great importance, but also maybe for people who have shoulder pains and neck pains. According to McKinsey, 24% has a problem with that within the workplace setup. Then strength and mobility training can be vital for them. And since the arena workplace is a really good way to, it's a really good way to help people get healthy habits. So by providing different types of solutions for physical activity, we can lower the barrier for them, making it more easier, more attractive, and hopefully also obvious, because that will increase the odds of that behavior happening time and time again. So, that's why I would really emphasize that when we are maybe physically active in a group or with colleagues or within the workplace, both in a remote session, because that is totally functional today, but also of course in a physical sense, that can really have a great effect for those individuals that needs it most. Last time we spoke about where can an individual have the best impact when it comes to physical activity. And it's not for those people who really are very active to add more. It's for the ones who have a sedentary lifestyle, taking those extra steps, getting that little bit of short physio session into the day. Those will have the greatest effects on their well-being. That is why the arena workplace is a really good place to work with healthy habits. And last but not least, and I think this is, as you've seen through this webinar, one of the most important parts, make it a priority. Because now more than ever, we should really be focusing on proactive workplace health, both for leaders, managers, and individuals. But feeling responsible for well-being isn't really the same as taking accountability, and that's where leadership comes in. In fact, many companies' long-term success may depend on whether they can rise to the challenge of addressing workforce wellness. So I would like to summarize with 3 different steps each organization can take, and hopefully you can use this in your everyday profession. But the first one that will have an impact, as we've seen through studies and through experience, that will have an impact on the workforce, both for the individuals and also for the company, is to shift the mindset from just being an HR question, because health is truly everyone's business, to help people lower the threshold, making it easy for healthy choices, supporting each other, and making physical activity accessible is really important. To go from a mindset where it's just an HR question to it's everyone's business. This is something we all can help with. A lot of times my boss, Johan, comes in here and asks if I wanted to go with him to the gym or maybe have a short walk while having some brainstorm session. Also, to measure well-being in a meaningful way, to use data and the needs of your company and the wants. And also, as someone said to me on LinkedIn this week, a really clever guy, he said, what does success look like for us? And I think that is one great way to really put it. To answer the question is, what is success for our organization or for my customers? How does success look like for them? And using that question alongside with data to see, okay, where we are now and where do we want to go? And then identify the biggest opportunities and build momentum through that. And as we've seen through this webinar, creating healthy habits and ways to be physically active, it's really, a most bang for your buck investment when it comes to having an impact in almost every area of one's company. And I would like to really end this webinar today before we have the Q&A, of course, but really saying that every organization has to prioritize the health of their well-being and their people, because it will lead both to the individual that they will be, really thriving, but it also will have a bigger effect on the productivity and also providing, fundamentals for organization being truly successful. But last but not least, and most importantly, it's the right thing to do. Thanks once again for joining us today. Both me and Rodney are really happy seeing you here, and we really hope you get a lot of value from this information. Please feel free to add us on LinkedIn. I'm very active, and if you want this 5-step for small and easy ways to increase physical activity throughout the day, I posted it this morning on LinkedIn, so you can go on and watch that if you want to. And we will really want to once again thank you all for joining in, and always remember to set your bar high, be kind, and do more of what makes you stronger. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, P.O. It's fantastic. So those of you that are on, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. We'll give you a couple of minutes to type that in. Again, use the question tab on your control panel there, and we'll be more than happy to answer anything that we can. If nobody has any questions over the next minute or so, then we will just go ahead and close this, and it will be on our website. So it'll be recorded and it'll be on our website, so you can either view it again or refer other people to it as well. So at this point, I don't see any questions coming through. So I'm hoping the question tab either works or there's just nobody that has any questions. So I'll wait 30 more seconds, and then P.O. will exit unless you have any last remarks. Otherwise, I want to just thank everyone for joining us. And for those that are watching this, please feel free to reach out with any questions or any concerns or any thoughts that you may have to either myself or P.O., who's specifically in the workplace wellness. All right, I think we're done. So P.O., thank you again. And we look forward to seeing all of you at some future time in some future event. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful night.